Hello and welcome to the final This Week in Racing of 2019. I'm David Land and I have got a very special show in store for you because there's not too much news breaking with Christmas happening in the middle of the week there, and now New Year's is coming up. Not too much stuff is breaking, though there are a couple of things I will talk about, but as the title would suggest, this is a special episode where I'm going to break down my top 10 moments of the entire racing season for 2019. So not only is this a weekly show, this is a yearly show in some respects. And also, it's also the end of the decade, though I couldn't really put together a list of the top 10 things to happen this decade. I'd have to think about that a heck of a lot longer than I did for the top 10 moments of 2019, but I think you'll enjoy the list. So let's get into it. Let's talk first about the news, and then let's get into my top 10 moments of 2019. The Dragon Speed IndyCar team has announced its schedule for 2020, though they have not announced a driver yet. Last year it was Ben Hanley, one of their sports car drivers. Dragon Speed will attend races at St. Pete, Long Beach, the Indy 500, Texas Motor Speedway, Mid-Ohio, and the season finale at Laguna Seca. The 6-race schedule is an even split between street circuits, ovals, and road courses. And I have to say, I'm very happy to see this team continue. Though others would call them a Joe Blow, I think some of their heroics last year, notably getting into Group 2 of qualifying at St. Pete against all odds in their first race, and then in the Indianapolis 500, qualifying on the first day and being safely in the show when pundits, myself included, kind of predicted that they would have been one of the first cars on the bump list. So salute to Dragon Speed. I'm excited to see them run 6 races next year. There are 40 cars on the Roar Before the 24 entry list for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Now, unfortunately, due to the economics of IMSA, that is down 7 cars from last year. But there is some good news on the list as well, including the LMP2 division, which averaged about 2 cars for the bulk of last season, is now suddenly up to 7 cars on the Daytona entry list, including Rick Ware Racing and Starworks Motorsports joining former stalwarts Dragon Speed and PR1 Mathiasen Motorsports. The entry list also features the Corvette C7R, which was shown just this week in the stunning yellow livery, which is so traditional of that car. Of course, the Rolex 24 is at the end of the month, but this will give us a good idea of who is fast and who is not, and also help IMSA get the final BOP, balance of performance, for the 24 hours. Something that became very controversial across social media, particularly on the NASCAR side of things, and for frankly good reason, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell had pretty spectacular crashes at a midget dirt car race in New Zealand. Now, some of the reaction obviously was just simply concern for the well-being of the drivers. Of course, both Larson and Bell were fine after these spectacular tumbles, but there were some interesting takes, to say the least, across social media, kind of calling for the ending of drivers like Larson going and running dirt or running series other than NASCAR. And I just have to quickly get on my soapbox and say that's a horrible take. I think that ultimately, yes, open-wheel cars on dirt are more likely to have big crashes like the ones you see. However, that's an accepted risk by both Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell, and they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't something that they loved. Obviously, they're well compensated for their services in NASCAR, but racers want to race, and last I checked, there hasn't been a NASCAR race since November. So I don't see any problem with this. Their team owners obviously let them do this, so more power to them, in my opinion. And that's the end of the news segment. We're going to be back after this quick break, and I will begin my top 10 list of moments in 2019. And welcome back. I tried a little bit of a new segment here, trying to integrate the ads a little bit more into the programming on the channel. Hope you appreciate it, or if you don't, let me know down in the comments. Kind of experimenting with some things for 2019. All right, let's get into my top 10 list of racing moments from 2019, and it's kind of appropriate that I just talked about Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell in a midget race, because number 10 on my list is this year's finish to the Chili Bowl race for the midgets, and just an unbelievable finish where Kyle Larson was leading. Looked like he was on his way to his first Chili Bowl win, but Christopher Bell had a little something else to say about that and was able to take the win and lead only one lap to win the Chili Bowl Nationals. And even afterwards, he managed to flip over after winning the race. So to all the people who are talking about the dangers of midget racing and dirt racing, even the winner sometimes can crash. But that was a fantastic moment, and I know a lot of people have mentioned to me, why don't you cover more dirt, David? So I figured that was a moment that was very exciting between two fantastic young talents of the sport. I think it was definitely worthy of getting on the list. Number 9, we head over to sporty car racing, where the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series of IMSA, I guess what used to be the Continental Series, obviously the tire suppliers changed, but what hasn't changed is the quality of the racing. And a very rainy Road America saw Robin Liddell put on an absolute clinic where he went from 4th to 1st in the final lap of the race and taking the ST and overall victory with his Chevrolet Camaro over the McLarens. And again, that was just one of the best finishes of the year, bar none. The pass that Liddell did into Canada Corner, taking 2 cars on the outside in the rain, that's something pretty special. And obviously, because I'm an American, it's kind of cool when an American car wins a sports car race. I'm sure some of the theme music from Ford versus Ferrari was playing during that theme, because anytime we Americans can win sports car races, that's always exciting. Number 8 is one that I think is going to be a little bit controversial, because of course it was controversial at the time that it happened, but we head to the world of NASCAR, where Justin Haley got some much needed revenge on the Daytona International Speedway, in which he, under crazy circumstances with weather and wrecks, causing quite a kerfuffle at the end of the race, when it was red flagged and unable to restart, Justin Haley for Spire Motorsports was declared the winner of the summer Daytona race in NASCAR Cup. This came on the heels of him getting completely screwed out of an Xfinity win at Daytona just a year prior. So karma always comes back around. And, again, I'm sure there will be other people who will point out similar moment or different moments. I think probably the one that a lot of people are going to be mad that isn't on this list is Matt DiBenedetto's drive at the Bristol Night Race. But frankly, these days in NASCAR, if you can't laugh at or enjoy some of the more stupid things that happen in the sport, you're probably not going to get any enjoyment out of NASCAR, period, these days. So I figured I'd pick a moment that was harmless enough. That was a fairly harmless, silly, interesting thing that happened. Just be thankful I didn't pick Matt Crafton winning the championship without winning a race. Number 7 on my list is just an event in general, and it is Super Sebring. And if you don't know what Super Sebring was, it was the first time that the IMSA WeatherTech Series and the World Endurance Championship hosted a race on the same weekend. WEC had a 1,000-mile endurance race in which we saw the Toyota Fernando Alonso take the victory, and I have to say, it was fantastic to see WEC and IMSA working together in one weekend, because you got something like over 24 hours of racing total between those two series, plus the Pilot Series, plus LMP3. Just a fantastic weekend all around. The best value, I would say, in racing, bar none, period, this entire year. I cannot wait to see that event continue. I think Sebring Raceway is a fantastic historical place. It's a great place to watch a race as far as I'm concerned, and hopefully it will mean that we see some more collaboration between the World Championship and IMSA going forward. Santa, please bring me hypercar DPI conversions for Christmas, even though Christmas has already happened. Maybe for New Year's, Santa. Come on, late gift. Number 6. This is one that I was very impressed with throughout the season, both on and off the track. But I have to give special props, and I guess call this me saying this is the Rookie of the Year for this year. I think I think that those honors should go to Colton Herta. He started out the year winning at the Rolex 24 in class for BMW, then moved on to the IndyCar series, where he probably should have been in the Fast Six at St. Pete, made a mistake, got a penalty, but came back in the next race at Circuit of the Americas and actually managed to win the race. But the highlight of his season, I believe, and the reason that I think he kind of rose above more of the other rookies, really across racing, was that drive at Laguna Seca, in which he led pretty much wire to wire and was holding off both Scott Dixon and Will Power for the entire length of the race. And the fact that he's moving into a fully funded and maintained Andretti car for next year, obviously he had some Andretti parts and Andretti engineers on the team last year, but I think it's only onwards and upwards for Herta going forward, and it was cool to watch the emergence of that driver this year. And I also have to say, it was nice of him to come on the channel and do an interview. Perhaps that was a bit of the bump, the David Land bump, to get him over the hump. So the top 5 is coming up next. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll get that right to you. Welcome back to the top 10 moments of 2019 in racing. Number 5 is one where a lolcow became a risen phoenix. I am, of course, talking about Mazda and Mazda Team Yost taking their breakthrough victory at the 6 Hours at Watkins Glen. This was a race that I witnessed myself. I've been at a couple races where I thought Mazda was going to pull it off. I remember specifically the 2018 Sebring 12 Hours. The car broke in the last little bit of the race, and the team had kind of become a meme for the car catching on fire and all sorts of things. I'm sure I've even had a thumbnail or two where Burning Mazda has shown up. But they finally put it all together, and in an endurance race, no less. Obviously the shortest one of the year, but they ended up stringing together a couple of wins throughout the season. The Mazda DPI, as far as I'm concerned, is the best looking race car in IMSA. There may be some debate there, but again, knowing the struggles that John Doonan, who eventually would become IMSA president later this year, went through with that program, to see them get a breakthrough win, that was a cool moment for me this year. Number 4, another finish to a major race. I just have to say the Indy 500 finish between Simon Pagenaud and Alexander Rossi. What a great duel. As far as I'm concerned, it's up there with the great duels for the end of the Indy 500 of all time. The Michael Andretti versus Rick Mears, the Al Jr. versus Emerson Fittipaldi. Rossi Pagenaud put on an absolutely fantastic show, exciting lead changes, and because of the way the IndyCar packages, you weren't exactly sure if they could pass, and when they started doing it, then it was all out the window, because then it became a question of when do you want to lead, when do you want to stay back, and what was the right time to make the move. It turned out it was Simon Pagenaud making the move, coming to 1 lap to go in turn 3, and that's how he managed to win the Indy 500. A fantastic duel and well earned by Simon Pagenaud. And quite frankly, Alexander Rossi, had he pulled it off, it would have been well earned by him too. And that's what the great duels are. The two best drivers in the race fighting it out in the final laps of the race. Number 3, I just have to give it to Formula One this year for 2 races in particular. And I decided not to split them up because they were so similar with changing weather conditions and crazy cars running into each other. The races at Germany, Hockenheimring, and the race at Interlagos, Brazil, were 2 of the greatest Formula One races, and quite frankly, the 2 greatest races I've seen all year. And it's weird because there's kind of this meme going around these days, and in fact, it's even reached the top levels of the sport. As you've seen, they've been trying to redesign the cars in Formula One to hopefully race better in 2021. And yet, this year, where everybody says the racing sucks and the racing couldn't get any worse, they managed to put on 2 of the best Grand Prix that I've seen in my lifetime. So I think it just goes to show you that the racing is best when it's unpredictable. And certainly those races did have a lot of unpredictability that helped, but that goes back to my original point, that unpredictability is exactly what racing needs. And it's great to see it at that upper echelon of the sport where, there's hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, and yet a little bit of rain or some cars running into each other or a mistimed pass can totally throw the race into chaos, and you can get Toro Rossos on the podium. Fantastic stuff from Formula One this year. Number 2, we're getting down to it. I think that, because of my hat, Where's the 66? Is it here? There's a 66. It's on one of the sides. But Fernando Alonso getting bumped from the Indianapolis 500. Not many people saw this coming, unless you were me, and you were standing there at that test day, and you were just kind of observing the McLaren pit, and you started to think to yourself, wait, hang on a second, these guys aren't very well prepared, are they? As it turns out, I was onto something, because not only did they not have a steering wheel ready to go right before they got to the track, they actually had to get one from Cosworth, but their backup car was not painted the correct shade of papaya orange, and so they missed some valuable track time that otherwise could have been finding speed or getting a proper setup. And ultimately it came down to Kyle Kaiser in a backup car that was not particularly pretty, not painted the team colors, managing to bump essentially the lowest funded car in the field, bumped the highest funded car in the field, and that's pretty much all you need to know. Fernando Alonso went home, and the Indy 500 gains back some of the international, infamy that it had lost in the split, because suddenly the Indy 500 became the race that Fernando Alonso was too slow to make. And I think we will have long-lasting implications of that bump for years to come because of the infamy that brought on. So number one, what could it be? I think the number one racing moment of 2019 is the fact that Roger Penske bought the IndyCar series and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I've said it since it came out. I think it's one of the biggest stories of all time. Certainly, in fact, if I was doing a decade countdown, it's probably one of the biggest moves of the decade, one of the biggest stories. This is now a move, like I said in my previous few videos, that could put IndyCar back into the conversation when you start talking about the top motorsports series, not only in the United States, but in the world. Roger Penske does not buy businesses that fail or are failing or don't have potential. So the fact that Roger Penske was willing to purchase the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, was willing to purchase IndyCar, leads me very excited to see what will happen over the course of the 2020s, to see what will happen. Will it be the roaring 20s? Will Roger Penske be able to work some of his business magic to bring the Indianapolis 500 and the IndyCar series into the 2020s in a strong way and possibly beyond? It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I am looking forward to it quite a bit. And moves like that don't come around very often. In fact, I talked about it. I think the Holman George family has owned Indianapolis for something like 65, 70 years. That's a significantly long time without a major change. So the fact that this change happened, it happened this year, and it has long-lasting, long-reaching possibilities for the future, makes it an easy number one for me. But of course, a lot of this channel, a lot of this show has a lot to do with you, and I would like to thank you guys for a fantastic 2019 and onwards and upwards from here. I've got a lot of announcements coming for 2020 coming forward that I think you are going to like, you are going to be excited about, and I can't wait to share them with you in the coming days and weeks. Let me know what you think your top 10 moments of 2019 are. Let me know those down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching me. I've got more content coming, including, I'm still working on it, but I've got my documentary of me taking my race car driver's test in a Formula Ford. I really want to make sure that that video is good because Charles Ante did a wonderful thing for me, making that opportunity available, and I cannot wait to share that with you. And yeah, 2020 is looking very awesome just based on the cool opportunities that I've gotten in 2019. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Have a happy new year, and I'll see you on the other side in the next video.